This is a remembrance of something that happened 40 years ago, in April 1979, that affected many gay men in Northampton and affected the community very deeply. It was a murder of a young man, 15 years old, and he was found slumped in an alleyway in just off Birchfield Road East at Beach Avenue, in April the 18th, 1979. So it is 40 years ago that this child was found dead, slumped by a garage in a cobbled alleyway. And I have always been reminded every year at this time of year of that person's death, as that person has never had justice, and the murder, as the police called it, has never been solved. That case is now a cold case and is still on the books. And I have, over the years, prompted the police and to some extent the local papers to keep going to find out why this is still not resolved. On April the 18th, 1979, a massive murder investigation was undertaken when a body of a 15-year-old boy called Sean McGann was found in an alleyway off Beach Avenue in Abington. He was slumped in a cobbled alleyway, and the mystery surrounding this boy's death has reverberated through the ages and has never been solved. I didn't get involved with the original incident because I had a life. I was living with my lover in Overston Road. So the initial reaction was, oh, nothing particularly concerning me and us. About maybe a month after this murder, John and I decided to go into Beckett's Park, which was then quite a sort of gay cruising area, and people used to cruise around and actually have quite a bit of a social life. So one Sunday afternoon we decided to go down and just partake of the air. The sun was out. What happened next was we got back to a car which was parked on Victoria Prom, which is just by Beckett's Park, and suddenly we were surrounded by 3 or 4 unmarked police cars, and they blocked us in, and then decided immediately to ask the question, am I homosexual? To which I replied, of course, because I was out and proud. I've been out and proud all my life. I wasn't going to suddenly decide to be in the closet. Immediately, we were then hauled up to the police station right there and then for an interview. The shock of that was quite profound, really, because we wondered what was going on. And then, of course, it was linked to how the police were dealing with the murder of this young man, because his body was found in Birchfield Road East and Beach Avenue, but his last known account of where he was on Midsummer Meadow by Beckett's Park, and when the fair was on at Easter that year. So he somehow disappeared from the fair that was on Midsummer Meadow just by Beckett's Park on the night before he was found. And because the Beckett's Park was known as a cruising area, the police decided that they were going to tackle it by trawling through people who seemed to be cruising on the park. So that was our initial involvement. We were hauled in for them to get statements that where we were on the night of Sean McGann's murder. And of course, like good citizens, you actually want to you want to say something good. What was happening was that the police were trawling the lives of many gay men because they could. Chief Inspector Crawley and his team decided that the focus was going to be looking for somebody that picked him up for sex or for some kind of devious activity. But then the coroner actually found that there had been no signs of sexual assault at all, and deemed that Sean McGann had died of asphyxia. But that didn't come out until 6 months later, after the initial finding of Sean. We were asked by the police, do we know who may have gone down there and who partook of the cruising area? Because, of course, it was an important murder investigation and they quite rightly wanted information. I, unfortunately, I told them one or two people that I knew may be able to help them, but on the caveat that was to help them with their inquiries. In those days, the police attitude towards gay men or gay people in general was very negative and very hostile. They were more very aggressive in their manner because they saw us as perverts and lowlife. And because of that, they relied on our discretion to gain as much information from us as possible. The word homophobia hadn't really been invented then, although I knew the word. During that time, 9,000 witness statements were collected, but in ways that was detrimental to many people. Many men lost their jobs, many men lost partners. The police went to workplaces, to family homes, to anywhere without due care and attention to ask for information about people, and outed people in ways that actually killed the investigation, in my opinion. Because they focused on one cohort of people, they missed, I think, lots of other avenues, and eventually closed the case down rather than opening it up. Sean McGann's murder was a catalyst for the police to subdue, subvert, undermine the process of liberation for gay men and women. It was a way of gaining access to information that was put on databases. It was an excuse to trawl as many people as possible. It was an excuse to gain information about a group of people that were seen as undermining morals and social cohesion. The Sean McGann murder allowed them to use their powers against us. I was a member of CHE, which was the Campaign for Homosexual Equality at the time. So I was getting phone calls from my friends, saying, "Chris, did you know that they've come to my workplace? They've outed me at work, and now they think I ought to be sacked because I'm gay and things." And I was having panic conversations with many people whose lives were being changed in ways that I don't think even the police really understood. I said, no, this is a more important issue. If police are doing this, they are ruining people's lives. And so I decided that I'd ring the Chronicle and Echo, which was the local Northampton paper at the time, which was daily printed, not weekly as it is now. And I got a reporter, a female, who immediately said to me, says, oh yes, we've actually got an inkling they're doing this. So I already got someone that understood the issues around collecting information and how the police were dealing with this crime, this horrendous crime of a young boy being murdered. We talked about it and explained how the atmosphere around the police handling of information was detrimental to many people's lives, and that continuing to do that will curtail the information coming out, because the gay people do not trust the police, will not trust the police. Their investigative processes are counterproductive to the investigation of the crime. The reporter asked me whether I was going to be, what I was going to be called, because again, it was all about labelling and about how people are being perceived, and therefore the reporter said, do I call you a self-confessed homosexual? Which I laughed at and said, no, I'm not guilty of anything. I will not be called a self-confessed homosexual. I'm not ashamed of anything. I'm out. And so we kind of skirted around some other options, but we came up with gay activist, because I was also kind of an individual who'd got involved with Gay Liberation Front as well, but off my own bat. And so I was gay activist Chris Dilworth in the paper. What happened then was kind of even more traumatic. There came a week in October where there was intense press speculation, police speculation on the death of Sean McGann, because this was 6 months later. The coroner had recorded this death by asphyxiation, and the police had decided to suggest that Sean McGann may have been murdered by a sex beast, and that was the Monday, October the 1st. And that was when I actually had my interview with the reporter. And on the Wednesday, I was headlining with a headline that said, do gays hold the key to Sean McGann's death? The headline is ironic. It can be taken, ambiguous, can be taken two ways. It can either be, do gays hold the key, or do gays hold the key? And I preferred the second one. And then on the Thursday of that week, to top it all, there was a headline that said, Sean's best friend has been found dead. The week was astoundingly upsetting. The police had sensationalized the approach. I, with my knowledge of what was happening with the gay community, had attempted to put a kind of break on the sensationalism, and the Chronic did their best. But then on top of that, the third headline that week that was horrendous was Sean McGann's friend had been found with a plastic bag over his head. The police saying that it was a tragic accident. I still remember that time, and I still am prompting the police and prompting the Chronicle and Echo and other Northampton BBC to still have a go at discovering what has gone on in this case, because it affected many, many people at the time and reverberated through the next decade. Sort of in the 70s, everybody was coming out, so people were gradually getting used to telling people of their sexuality and their political stance on it. It was sexual politics in action, really. And so in 1979, we were still progressing on that. And in Northampton, there was a good gay community and work towards liberation, towards community, towards a coherent sense of togetherness and pride. So there was a good, vibrant kind of air around the place, and quite a community. The tragic loss of Sean and his friend John Condon put a stop to that completely. 2 weeks after Sean's death, Margaret Thatcher came to power and started the downward spiral of gay rights and homosexual equality through the 80s and the 90s. And with the AIDS crisis, had a profound effect on many, many gay men's lives in that time. One of the positive things that came out of the death of Sean McGann and how the police made a right balls up of their investigation was a group of gay men and lesbians got together and formed the Northampton Gay and Lesbian Alliance, not necessarily for the social life of gay people and lesbian people in Northampton, but more to do with teaching authorities how to work with a community that is marginalised and seen as less than equal. And so the Northampton Lesbian Gay Alliance was started to teach social workers, police and other agencies, the hospital, to work with us rather than see us as part of the problem. So that was a very positive thing that came out of this tragedy. But that was set up in order for good communication, good alliance between the gay community and the authorities, and did great work. And the police responded well and have now become one of the leading lights in the country in terms of their attitudes towards LGBTQA people. But it took a while and a lot of hard work by a lot of people who had been appalled in the way that we were treated during that particular investigation. But we are now living in 2019, and it's coming up to the anniversary of Sean's death, with no solution, and I am still on the case. You may have never heard of that person. Gay history can be smothered by the prevalent culture within which we live, which is basically heteronormative news and media. But I just want to tell you that there are still things that need to be resolved, and Sean McGann's murder is one of them.